I'm David Katz with ThePostGame.com. We're here with Leigh Steinberg. It's a privilege and an honor to have you with us today. How you doing?
Doing great.
So how many Radio Rows / Super Bowls has this been for you?
Oh, about 35. I've been doing this since 1975. So this is my 42nd year.
Incredible. It's grown quite a bit since those first couple of years, I imagine.
Oh, if I had taken you into what passed as the press room or Radio Row back then, we could have fit it in here.
You have such insight into the league and what's going on in the NFL. I got to ask you, this morning the league talked about passing some form of a Rooney rule for female executives in the NFL. How do you think that's going to work? Is that a clear deficiency on the part of the league that you think they can fix with a rule like this?
I think that what has to happen, the same way it did with African-American quarterbacks, the same way it did with African-American coaches, is you have to start layering them into the pipeline younger. And so it has a lot to do with entry jobs, because the more women that you have in younger assistant positions and they move up and mature, then you start to get a huge group. But there are women all over the world of football, and they do a great job.
What ranks do you think will be filled with women the first, among executives or coaches or referees?
You know, I saw Jen Welter last night, who could be a coach, but no, I think it will start with executives for teams, because the ability to negotiate a contract, manage a salary cap, marketing, all those are equally accessible to male and female. And if you go back to law school and business school, where many of the executives are coming from, heavily female population in those. So that you're getting that, young, ambitious, bright women need to know their opportunities are there.
You've always represented extremely well-rounded people, not just great football players, but people who are good in the community. What types of qualities do you look for when you see these 20, 21, 22-year-old men and you decide you want to represent them? What qualities are you looking for?
Well, for example, with Paxton, what we looked for is, did he have good values? Did he have a sense of self-respect? Did he come from a warm, loving family? Did he nurture relationships? And then was he willing to be a role model and go back to the high school, collegiate, and professional communities that helped shape him and set up high school scholarship fund, college scholarship fund, and a foundation? So I think athletes have a tremendous opportunity to serve as role models. They can trigger imitative behavior, so that's who we look for. And if they're 6'6" and having to play quarterback, that's all the better.
Even better. Your son Matt has followed you into the business. Can you tell us what it's like having your child in the same business that you're in?
It's sort of unbelievable because he went to SC Film School.
Wow.
So I thought it would be Hollywood. Then he got a teaching credential, but he's got a didactic memory. He knows about 3 times more about the details of football and players than I ever could. So it's really heartwarming.
That's wonderful. Plus, in this media-centric world we live in, he could take all that film school knowledge and help these people craft their brand, craft their persona, the whole marketing side of the business. I'm sure that would benefit from his background.
Exactly, and my kids had an unusual upbringing. They used to say, "Can we ever meet any celebrities?" Well, there's Ben Roethlisberger and Warren Moon and Troy Aikman and Steve Young holding you on their lap. I think you've met a few.
Speaking of holding on your lap, I read somewhere that Marilyn Monroe, you sat on Marilyn Monroe's lap. Can you explain how that happened?
My grandfather ran Hillcrest Country Club in the 50s in Los Angeles, so that was the maven or hangout for most of Hollywood. He would have lunch every day with Groucho Marx, George Burns, Jack Benny, George Jessel, Danny Kaye. So from those days, I ended up with an Elvis Presley autographed guitar, a picture which you're too young to remember, but it was Rin Tin Tin, and Marilyn Monroe once came by, and we have a photo of a really tiny me and her. And the unfortunate thing was, at about 5 or 6, I had no idea what the fuss was about.
So you've been really ahead of and outspoken on the concussion issue. Can you talk about the movie Concussion, what impact you think that might have on the players, and what you're hearing from players who have kind of gone through the league and are looking back on their careers? How do they feel about everything?
Well, first of all, if you take players who are playing, they're all in a state of denial. They've accepted from Pop Warner and Little League the fact that real men play with pain, real men don't get out, so they don't protect themselves. They think that this play is more important than anything, so it's incumbent on the rest of us. I had a crisis of conscience back in the 1980s because my quarterbacks, half the quarterbacks in the league, kept getting hit in the head. We'd go to doctors and ask them how many are too many, what's the cutoff point. They had no answers. So we held a concussion conference in 1994 and put out a white paper, neurologists on the sideline, standardized regimen, better helmetry, blocking and tackling with the head taken out. No one listened. And we did it again in 2007. So the problem is not just that we know that 3 or more concussions produce ALS, Alzheimer's, premature senility, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and depression. It's that every time a lineman hits a lineman at the line of scrimmage, it produces a low-level subconcussive event. So an offensive lineman could have 10,000 of them coming out of professional football, none of which have been diagnosed, none of which he's aware of, but the aggregate almost certainly does brain damage, and this is an existential threat inside this completely dominant sport that is America's passion. So there's new helmetry that is potentially on the way. Tate technology uses coil and compression in a helmet to displace that energy force, so up to 46% of it goes away. We don't starting to talk about what age kids should play tackle football at. Eliminating extraneous hitting during the week or during training camp, and then better diagnostic techniques on the sidelines so you can spot the subconcussive blow. And lastly, nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals that can somehow heal the brain. So I put together a venture firm, Steinberg Ventures, to try to invest in some of those technologies. So we need to be in action, not just complaining. As to concussion, I met with Peter Landsman about a year and a half ago. I read the script, I gave him some pointers, and some people were disappointed at Concussion because they expected a documentary. That it was the story of Ben and Amalo. But here's the point, every single thing that focuses attention on this issue, not just a football issue, baseball, college, high school, hockey, field hockey, AYSO soccer, so it's a societal issue. Everything like concussion that focuses attention is a positive thing.
You're commissioner for a day. You've been so far ahead of this issue. You're commissioner for a day. What's the one rule change you initiate to make the great game safer?
I put some R&D money into helmetry because the current helmet just protects against skull fracture. And I make sure that players are wearing them. So that gets you going.